Hello guys, and you're welcome back. In our last lesson we saw how we use the if statements to actually display results for comparing two values. So this time around, let's go ahead and see how we can control a game object using C#. So what I want to achieve is to control this cube by pressing keyboards. Basically, I want to transform this cube and change its rotation based on an input I have from the keyboard. So I want to rotate it on the y-axis and spin this cube like that when I press a button on the keyboard. So let's go ahead and see how we can actually do that right now. So the first thing we're going to do is to create a script. So let's go to create and create a C# script, and I'm going to call that moving the cube. So as I have this moving the cube script, what I'm going to do is to just double click that script and then have that open up. And I'm going to reload all my scripts, and I'll use my .NET package. Let's quickly get back to Unity. So first of all, if I go to edit and go to the project settings and click on input manager, I can check which axes I'm working. So if we check our horizontal axis, you can see that we have this name called horizontal, and basically this is what we're going to use to control our game object by accessing this via C#. So let's see how we can access the horizontal axis using the input manager via our script. So let's go back to C# to our script called moving the cube, and let's just go ahead and create a new function. So right now I'm just going to call it void. Let's just call that gameobject move. So once I have that, what I'm going to do right now is to just have a reference to our axes. So right now, if I type input to get a reference from the input class, I'm going to use the method getAxes. And just right here, if I put my mouse on the get axis, it says it returns the value of the virtual axis identified by axis name. And we can actually see it says string axis name, which is the name of the axis, and that axis is the horizontal axis. So I'm just going to get this and just say horizontal to get the name of that axis. So now that we have the name of that axis, we can't really necessarily go ahead and use this quite yet, except we can use an if statement and then pass the values within that if statement. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that right now. So first, let's store a reference to our input. So let's just call that float h to just stand for horizontal, and we'll get that name called float h, right? So what we're going to do right now is to use the if statement to check if the value of h is greater than 0. So the value returned when you press your keyboard, it's going to animate or be set to true if that value is greater than 0. And just to show you what the value of h is, if we do a debug.log, and right here we could just say the value, I'll just say the value of h is, just to see what kind of data it returns. So right here I'll just do a plus h. So let's go ahead and save that, and let's attach this to our game object. So let's go ahead and click our cube. Now let's just remove this. Let's drag our moving the cube. Let's go ahead and click our cube and drag moving the cube and attach it right here. And let's go ahead and save our scene and then play our scene. We're not going to see anything because we need to actually call our function. So let's just go to start and let's just call gameobject move. So now we've called gameobject move. Let's just get back here in Unity and then just play our scene again. So right now we can actually see our console, and it says the value of h is 0. So it's returning a float value when we used our debug.log. So let's go ahead and do a little bit more coding to change our cube. So what I'm going to do is to actually use an if statement. So we're going to say if h is greater than 0, we want to transform and rotate our cube. So we're going to say gameobject dot transform dot rotate, and we're going to pass in values for our x-axis, which is going to be a 0f. I'll just set that to 0f. So for our y-axis, we're just going to do a time dot delta time, and then for our z-axis, let's also do a 0f. And this is transform, just like that. But we want to smooth out our time dot delta time. So let's go ahead and create a speed right here. So I'll do a public speed float, public float speed, and we'll set that default value to 0f. So it's not going to do anything. So basically what we're going to do is to multiply speed by our time dot delta time, like that. And then else, if the value of h is less than 0, which means it's a negative and it's going in the other direction. So we're going to say if h is less than 0, which means it's spinning in the other direction negatively. We'll just do the same thing we did right here, but this time around we want to flip our axes. So the best way to flip our axes is to multiply it by a negative value. So let's go over here and do a float a negative, and I'll set that to a minus 1.0f floating value. So we'll multiply this floating value by negative right there. Awesome. So now that we have that, let's just go ahead and save this. And this time around, instead of running this in our start method, let's go ahead and run this in our update method, because we want this every frame. So right now we're going to pass this in our update, and we're going to run this. So basically what we're saying is, if we're pressing the horizontal button, we want to move this, rotate this cube to the right, and if we press the left button, we're going to move this to the left. So let's go ahead and get back to Unity, and because we've assigned that to our cube, so let's set a speed of say 500, and in our game view, let's turn off maximize on play, because we don't want this to fill up the screen. And let's go ahead and test this code. So now that we have this, if I press the left button, I can see I'm spinning my cube left counterclockwise, and if I press the right button, it's spinning the cube towards the right. So we are going left and we're going right. And basically, if we open up our command line, we can actually see the value changing. So let's go ahead and let me quickly put this back, and let's just run that on our let's set this back to start, and let's go ahead and get rid of this and just play that. And sorry, let's get back to Unity and clear the script, and let's go ahead and just play our scene. So by playing that, if we get back here, and I'll just bring up the console and drag this right here and just place that. If you get back here, we can just see that value running once. Right, so that's what happens when you place this in an update method. So to fix this, We'll just get this, get rid of this, and get back to our game object. And what we can do is to get rid of this. Right, so it's awesome. And again, if we get back to our scene, alright, so basically that's how we can actually create a script, attach that script to a game object, and control that game object's movement. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next lesson.